there's so many ways you can look at the situation, both negatively or positively, and make a conscious choice as to look at it in the way you want. You can see the greatest things in the worst things. There's no limit to how one can look at something, and most importantly, see it in relation with the whole. The very purpose of one's existence, as a matter of fact. For it is serving that, this present situation. Even within the worst situation in life, you can find the greatest opportunity for yourself to find clarity deep within. So it's not like one needs to dwell into the negativity that the situation may bring about, but see it within a greater picture, because this is what it is about. It's taking place within a much bigger picture than what we may perceive from our own little individual human existence. Everyone needs to take time to look within, to look at where one sits within oneself, how one perceives oneself, how one may have the tendencies to look at oneself or at life in certain ways, as opposed to come from a place of freedom in order to possibly see that whatever is taking place may be part of a much greater picture that may be possible for us to see clearly, directly, and to act on it within. The whole purpose of difficulties, suffering, samsara, is really to find freedom itself, to find out within what it is that is truly authentic and is worth our attention, our thoughts, feelings, and behavior. And once you tap into that very purity of being, then the answer is there. Then you can navigate the difficulties that may be presented to you on this level of human existence. So from a place of clarity, you come to surrender to whatever is taking place, because you know that it's in the hands of something much greater. And this is what brings the peace that we're looking for, as a matter of fact. Even the peace that most people are looking for in this material plane, it's still the same peace. It's just that the peace is looked in ways that are outside, that are defined by society based on security, fear, and desire. But fundamentally, the same peace, the same sense of well-being that everyone is looking for. Some have enough maturity and authenticity to look within and to see that this very existence, very purpose is to find that inner peace out of understanding that everything happens out of a greater intelligence that we can only submit and serve in accepting to see oneself as we are, independently from anything of mind and of this physical existence. And even when we are so concerned about this physical existence, when we look at what could possibly happen out of that virus situation, these are still modes of interpretation taking place in our minds, which creates the tension, the insecurity, the fear, which makes you become a slave to lower vibrations, to instinctual state of mind. If within you come to choose the right way to look at the situation, then you can rise above it and find a place of freedom in it. It only suffices to be honest with oneself and to see exactly where we are in our thoughts, to see which thoughts we are investing into. And then necessarily you go deeper. You come to realize that you are the one choosing to see the situation in the way you want. Therefore, the piece is yours. Therefore, you act on it in the proper manner. And I think these understanding is what needs to be shared more than anything. To understand that we create our reality, in the sense that we are the one responsible for our own sense of well-being, itself standing independently from the mind and the body, even independently from this physicality. So I think this time is a good time. It allows people to face themselves, look at themselves, question their ways of thinking, their ways of looking at it all, how they interact with other people. So the opportunity to go within is a great thing for everyone. When you're forced to quarantine yourself, there's still something taking place on that level, whether it's the person is conscious of it or not. Especially if things get even worse than that, than what it is right now. And also, I think it's not necessarily simply a great opportunity to go within, but to actually come to see the fear that lies at the root of this sense of separate self that we identify with. It brings out all these insecurities that may not have come that strong before. So in that sense, it's an opportunity to look within, to see what we're made of in truth, and to find out beyond that what is really our true nature out of this greater perspective. Don't you find that there is a sense of peace in that? The moment you accept to look at everything within as it is. And that is the purpose of it all. We come to tap into something much more real. So maybe out of that, humanity will step up a bit more in terms of being aware and connected, as to see the very nature of this existence itself temporary, not standing on anything solid, and to realize that death is walking aside at the same pace as life. Life and death are walking together at all times, every moment. So it makes you wonder why it is that we are living. Isn't it to transcend this idea that life should be a certain way, to realize that even our true state of being has access to unlimited ways of seeing.
As far as the collective consciousness now, it's really changed, eh?
Well, it's just a way to force people to look at themselves. The thing is, when everything goes well in your life and you do whatever you want, whenever you want, on some level, it's nice, it's beautiful, and it's interesting. But it does not mean that necessarily allows you to face yourself as you are. In fact, in most cases, it gives you a chance to escape from yourself.
It seems like just an amazing opportunity or an amazing opening in the collective consciousness. Even there's a lot of fear and all of fear and trepidation, but that's on the level of the body mind, and naturally our body mind will feel fear. But who we really are, to be able to shift out of that and to experience ourselves as the undying, unborn, ever free, timeless, infinite being that's always present and here, is just so amazing. Could you talk more about that?
That is the purpose of this very existence, with all its fluctuation, these different states, these different things that we experience. It's all in relation with giving us an opportunity to see how we are actually looking at oneself. So it's a question of seeing what may lies within, then perceiving exactly directly how it is that you are looking.
In that way, we can only perceive through the lens of our usual way of looking, unless something happens that expands us beyond that usual viewpoint. Eh?
The main thing about this is that you come to realize that what it is that you're perceiving is of the same nature as your consciousness. It's not apart. It's not like there's someone looking at something outside.
Okay, right.
The one looking is itself what it is that is looked. All challenges that we meet in life are all triggers which allows oneself to precisely come to realize that we are the one creating our own sense of being by the way we perceive. So at the moment you allow yourself to see directly how you perceive, necessarily you become less attached to the way you were perceiving. And so simultaneously your state of consciousness also changes. Your way of perceiving also comes to resonate accordingly.
You know, I've heard many teachers use the word consciousness, and some use the word consciousness to be conscious of something or of a state. There has to be something to be conscious of to have consciousness. So it's always in relation in a way. But then there's the pure awareness or pure consciousness, they'll say, which is like the absolute, the beyond consciousness. So could you clarify how you're using the term consciousness?
Well, as you point out, most of what it is that is talked about in terms of consciousness is in relation with some object of perception or state,
Yes.
as if there were nothing to be perceived or experienced as states, there wasn't any consciousness. But in truth, everything perceivable, everything experienceable, any states whatsoever,
Mm-hmm.
only take place because of your consciousness. In other
Right.
words, if there isn't any a consciousness associated to these things perceive or experience, as if there was no consciousness then. But the truth of the matter is the opposite. Because
Right.
there is consciousness, there is a perceiver and something perceived or experienced. In terms of consciousness and its authentic meaning, it stands itself beyond both
Right.
the perceived object and the perceiver. It appears in it, but itself beyond it, itself within anything experienceable and beyond, meaning that everything experienceable is also made out of that consciousness, but itself, none of it, itself, the whole of it all, and beyond, itself aware. Or even for you to be aware of the greatest experience or state, something in you must already be aware. So therefore, consciousness, as it truly is, as the absolute, remains. So when I say that what we're really coming to be in terms with is how we look at everything. Because in seeing how you look at everything, you come directly to the seer. Whatever it is that is perceived is an indication of where you're at in your consciousness. Thereby, your consciousness takes the form, the dimension of that perception.
So if there's no association with in the instant of we could call it perception, as if there's a perception.
Yeah.
There's no perception then, really. Is
But
that
there
true?
may be perception, but it's all very light, transparent.
Yes. Yes.
The purity of your consciousness remains.
Yes.
And perception will comes and goes, but they will be infused by the purity of your consciousness. So therefore, your perception will be most likely in tune with what's real than other one.
Mm.
But without any need to fixate on it, right? Or even especially to own it or to identify with.
I think there's a reflex action in my psyche, whatever word you want to use, of clinging, of trying to hold on to initiation, or I've had that flash of awareness, of consciousness. But then there's this after effect of the, I'm going to hold on to that. Will happen kind of like automatically.
But this is what the whole phenomenon of matter is about. All around the grasping. If you can't grasp at physical objects, then you will try to grasp at spiritual objects. But it appears as if you need to go through these stages in order to come to a place of indifference. Indifference in the sense that you truly come to realize that all there has ever been is reality alone. Absolute consciousness of that is yourself, not dependent on this mind body apparatus, and yet not in denial of it. Contrary, and total acceptance of everything that may be taking place on all levels of your being.
So, but yet that acceptance, the state of acceptance, is in the mind, isn't it?
Well, you can see it that way, but when we talk about seeing everything as it is, that's not out of the place of mind. That's out of the place of reality. It's both the mind and no mind. It's universal.
So, Justine, as we go through our daily lives, and if we really want to be grounded in our beingness, it's a good thing to ask ourselves each time that the thought comes to us. Let's say if we have a feeling or fear or a craving or whatever emotion or ideas coming through, to ask ourselves who is having this feeling, or who is having this idea, or who is walking, or who is it that's working. And apparently that really helps to clear up our hidden tendencies. Would you say that would be a good thing to do?
Well, it will bring your attention back into yourself, as opposed to react from any tendencies of thinking certain ways or whatnot. So it is as if asking these questions create a gap in the flow of your present thinking or positioning, so that you may step out of it into a place of greater clarity, so that you may not necessarily simply go beyond the present circumstance, but see the falsity of it, the limitation of it, and see in a much greater manner anything that may be related to your present situation. But you really come to ground yourself when you give yourself the chance to be whole in the moment, bringing your whole intensity of being within being itself. And so all aspects of yourself, physically, emotionally, mentally, comes to be held within that intensity of being. That is the outmost form of grounding. Because you can, for instance, in meditation, get into places of emptiness and feel that or want to see that as a place of grounding, because there's no problems there. There's just emptiness and somehow purity of being. But then again, you can't function in the world out of that place. You can't be in a place of perfect consciousness when dealing with forms, circumstances, and unpredictable events that ask for immediate responses, physically, emotionally, mentally. Whereas if you do bring your whole intensity of being in the moment, out of which all aspects of yourself are integrated, then even on the mere level of physicality, you'll come to act in the best manner. So in that regard, grounding is really about the wholeness of being and being able to stand in that moment by moment and to come back to it at will. And within that intensity of being, you can, yes, both totally see everything at its proper level while even contemplating higher states of consciousness, formless state of consciousness, and being able to navigate within different levels at will. So to me, being grounded is being able to embrace it all at once, to feel free to act on it in any given circumstances. We've heard much about transcendental state of consciousness as if that represented the ultimate. When it's not the ultimate, these are just other aspects of consciousness. The very ultimate is when everything is seen within a whole. Then the very ordinary becomes itself the very extraordinary. And so whether there is a low or a high, these are all different angles of seeing, while abiding as the ultimate seer, the consciousness that you are, itself embracing everything on all levels, not in denial of anything on any levels, not choosing any one level in opposition to any other levels, seeing it all equally, everything at its own level, while infusing everything with its own quality of reality.
When you talk about this, the space that you were talking about, where when it's the consciousness that is encompassing the perceiver and the perceived, and then you can move. You said something like you can move through that at will. So I'm wondering, is it the personal will, or is even that will, when you move it towards whatever you're moving to, is it the consciousness will?
Yeah, that's the consciousness will. For everything within consciousness is already there in infinity. What brings about the perception of something in particular is in relation with wherever your attention goes. And within consciousness, because everything is already there in infinity, then you have to come to the conclusion that it isn't the consciousness' will to allow you to perceive in any way you want, so to say, to function on any level you want at will, because you are everything already. So simultaneously, thereby you can function on many levels at the same time. And that there is less and less of a question of duality between what may appear as the highest and the lowest. Even these notions disappear. It doesn't mean that these levels disappear as such, but they are lived in within a place of integration and a place of reality to which they belong and are made of. So here moving at will is more like a symbolic, indicative of the total creativity that is inherent to consciousness, giving you this ability to move in any direction, to see in any angles, and ultimately to see everything out of a place of reality, to see that all there is reality. So in that regard, everything perceivable you become. It's not like there's an external world as such. Because you come to understand that whatever you perceive is inherent to where you're at within your consciousness, then any division between an external world and inner world disappear. So it's just a question of figuring out things or getting somewhere or finding something, experiencing anything or reaching any state, then to see exactly how you perceive as it is. Because in normal case, when you find yourself dwelling on something, perceiving something, you don't really see it. You just engage in something that is taking place regardless of your knowing, kind of. But when you bring attention into it and see for yourself that you are following a particular perception, then all of a sudden you come to realize that there is something greater than that, always. That you can really have any ways of perceiving at will. Because then you're tapping into consciousness.
That's what you mean when you say you're with different angles simultaneously, and you play with the reality of where the angle is.
Yeah. So when you're challenged in a way that you tend to hold on to certain perceptions, like when things are not going your way, for instance, then it becomes very interesting to allow yourself to see it and to relax into it. So this is why it's when we meet a time like today, it brings out these tendencies that may not have been required to look at in other times. So you could say that this present situation that we are all facing is a purification time for something greater to take place, the level of our existence. And in truth, if you allow yourself to relax into that, if that is truth, then your whole systems comes to tell you that, to confirm that to you. But then you start feeling somehow good about it. That is the sign that you're tapping into the right perspective of seeing things. So it's not that you're looking for the right perspective. You're looking at what it is that you may be holding on to at the moment, and relax into it. And then whatever you may have been holding on to comes to dissipate. and something higher, more truth comes to the foreground. So it's never about looking for something, not even looking to understand something, but to hold yourself as you are in the moment, so that you may go beyond all tendencies to hold you back, to hold you down. And when you're no longer held down, then being free, there is nothing that you become concerned of so much. So it's not that you know something more or less, or you have more of an understanding of something or whatnot, but you come to a place of truth within itself, the answer. So I think this very present situation purpose is to come to a place of full responsibility for oneself, to bring consciousness in the way we're saying anything, and responsible for whatever we may have created in the past. For whatever we've created in the past is that which comes our ways in the future. So there comes a time when you meet that challenge, and that you become fully responsible for how you are with it. Taking on the responsibility of everything you've created as to hold your cross. Accept to fully hold the consequences of all that you've created, you may have created in the past, and find clarity and stand in that firmly as to go beyond the need for anything to be different on all levels, and to know as a fact that you're also the infinite, already full, and definitely not in denial of anything, and not being afraid of seeing anything as it is, as to not being afraid of losing anything at all. Fearless, shameless, totally able to face everything as it is.